really happy to have you here and really happy that you joined. My name is Filip Bablić. I'm the lead Android developer at Stream for Jetpack Compose, which is a really cool technology. And I'll be answering some questions for you that Recro is asking. So I hope you have an awesome time. My story is a bit weird, essentially. Well, first off, I'm from Croatia, which is a really small country here in Europe. We're famous for our, seas and all that, all the tourism that you can come in. You can, have a really nice summer vacation here. I'm not in that part of Croatia, sadly, but it's really nice to be here in the continental part. And my entire journey started very by accident, I would say. So I initially had some experience with development, with programming in high school. That was actually the first time I had any experience, but I didn't really like it all that much. I didn't feel that we were learning things in the proper way. I didn't really feel that we were learning things in a way that we can apply them to new problems, that we can actually build some solutions with this. And I'm usually a very, solution or like result-driven person. I like to see some results when I build something. And because we didn't really have that, I had a very poor experience. I didn't like development very much. After 4 years of high school, I finally decided, I'm going to college. I'll probably have some computer science classes there. Well, I knew that I will have them. So I wanted to prepare for college, just not to look like, a person who has absolutely no knowledge, who doesn't know anything. So I did that, and I started learning Java back in, I think, 2015, essentially. So about 6 years ago, I started learning Java for my personal projects, just like play around with it and create some small projects that I can use, like, small tic-tac-toe or something like that, or just like small console applications. And I really liked it because like I was finally building something that's not just, let's find create a problem that calculates a few numbers together or puts them together or something like that. It wasn't like that. I actually built something that's more concrete, something that I can see, something that I can play around with, interact with. And at that time, I had an Android phone, which made me realize that I'm kind of learning Java for the most part, and Android is currently built in Java. I did some research. So I was like, okay, I might want to, pursue a career in Android development. It seems like something that I would like to do, and especially because like phones, everyone had phones, or everyone started getting phones, and the phones were running Android most of the time. So you could see if you were building a new application, you could actually see what's going on. You can play around with it. You can like go into the application and do some really nice work that's going to help you in your day. And that's essentially something that I wanted to try. So a friend of mine at the college essentially like recommended to me if I wanted to become an intern at the company he was an intern at. I came there. I didn't really know too much. I was still a very newbie person, so I couldn't really do a lot of work. But they took me on an internship and said that they're just going to like monitor my results and see if I essentially have the knack for it, if I understand programming, and if my results are going to be positive, which I took as a challenge. So I really did a lot of work. I worked a lot, like every single day, which was probably too much at the time. So I was, learning before college. I went to college, did my lessons and everything. I came home, or I went to the internship office and just, started learning things in terms of programming. And that happened for a few months until they actually said, okay, I think you are like capable enough to start working in Android and start learning Android applications, something like that. And I started building my first Android applications, which were like a weather app, which everyone does, a to-do list, and so on. And I realized that whenever I build something like this, it's a really awesome experience to learn something new and to explore like the different types of Androids. Like there were so many things you could do. And when you look at really complex applications, they're super awesome. They have so many features. And then I took a look at my applications, which is like a one-screen weather app, and I was still super happy with it. So I just wanted to increase my skill level. I wanted to become better, to be really capable to build something very complex on my own. And essentially this led to me like working every single day on it, like learning new things, trying to learn new behavior in Android, learn new features, build something a bit more complex. And at that time, like somewhere like a few months in, like 5 or 6 months in, I also started working on an internal product by the company, which was really cool, and it gave me a lot of experience. So I realized that all of this experience is really good, but what I liked the most was actually sharing the experience and sharing the knowledge with someone else. I like talking to my friend about the things that I built in Android because he worked in iOS, and we could compare different things. We could like say, oh, this is super easy in Android, or this is super easy in iOS, but it's hard on the other platform. So we compared, we constantly discussed different things, how we would solve the problems and so on, which is super, super awesome when you have like this kind of environment where you can discuss your work with someone else. So this event eventually led to me like doing more, presentations, or like actually writing some content on my blog post on Medium. I started writing some small examples of how I did things to build specific apps. And then finally, I started doing more presentations and so on. So this is kind of how I started. It's very weird. It's nothing really linear. It just like kind of happened out of nowhere. I became an intern. Then I started working a lot. I learned a bunch of new things, got on a new project, which was actually like a real project, a real application with thousands of users. And it spiraled into like multiple different ways of me doing conference engagements. Well, initially like local community engagements, and then finally conferences, into me writing more content, and then finally, writing books about Android, and just in general, being a very, I hope it doesn't sound conceited, but like being a social presence in Android, being able to share my experience, share my knowledge. And I guess that's why I'm here now. So there are like some things that could easily be taken as achievements. So for example, conference engagements, people really think that, for the most part, being up there on a conference stage where there's hundreds of people in front of you, that's definitely a huge accomplishment. It's not like an accomplishment that's to let's say get there, but it's like a personal thing, because I still struggle, with stage fright and everything like that. When I get up on the stage, I become nervous. So everyone goes through this process. And I think it's really important for everyone to understand that this is normal, and everyone has the same feelings. That could be taken as an accomplishment, I guess. But at the same time, I think there are multiple things, such as I mentioned, writing some content, writing a book, or working on a few books, or being on a conference. That's all really, really good examples of some accomplishments that I'm very proud of. But in the end, I think it kind of culminates into two directions. So first, like joining the GDE program, and which is the Google Developer Expert program, which is a very highly community-driven program. And essentially, the point of the program is to share the knowledge that you have and teach other people, so that you make a better community out of your domain. So for example, for me, it's Kotlin and Android. I think this is really important. And this is like probably the biggest accomplishment that I have, is that I'm able to not just, go to like a local event or visit a class of high school students or something like that, but I'm also able to do this impact on a global scale. So here we are, in an online event, or in like an online thing, and I don't really have to travel anywhere from my home, but I can still make an impact into other people. And that, I think that's the biggest accomplishment you can have in, I guess, any career, essentially. So that would be my biggest thing. I've been really dedicated to communities for the past 5-6 years. And I really I absolutely love, and I'm really touched whenever I see people that I was teaching like 2 or 3 years ago become really, really established developers, like really self-driven developers, people who are very capable in their positions, who are just exploring new things, exploring new ways, like growing their careers. I think that's the biggest accomplishment ever. So whenever you make like a small impact, again, it's kind of like a cliche to say, but it's like a ripple effect. You help one person solve a task, but that also means that they're also going to be able to help someone else solve the same task. Or you mentor a few people who then, become really strong developers who then mentor more people. I think that's really big impact and really big change. And just seeing that, like 20, 30 people that I've taught here in Osijek actually got their jobs as Android developers or iOS or web or whatever kind of developers, but they actually got their jobs through learning by themselves, and also through some of I guess our help through the community engagement. That's the biggest accomplishment ever. Just like seeing that the work that you put in has created a huge impact, and based on that impact, even like more people are happy and exploring new careers and just like growing their roles in general. Yeah, so there have been a few, as you mentioned. Everyone makes mistakes. I think the first mistake, and this is something that I mentioned when I started learning this development, is just like working too much and pushing myself too much. I see this in a lot of people because we all have this notion that so for example, if someone looks at me with 5-6 years of experience, and they see me present at a conference, write content for people, or just participate in any kind of event, or see me build like a really cool product, they might want to get to the same level, let's say. That's kind of how I can describe it. Like they want to do the same things. They want to approach to that point where they can also speak at conferences, write content, and so on. What's really important in that process, and this is something I can't stress enough, is that every single person has their own pace. For me, for example, it took 4 or 5 years to reach a really, really good position where I'm comfortable enough to speak at really big conferences, to write really strong content, or that I'm comfortable enough with my abilities as a developer. For someone else, it might be 2 years, but for someone else, it also might be 10 years, if that makes sense. So really try to keep to your own pace. My initial reaction, when I started working in development, is I had a few people around me in the internship that were really, really good. You can see that their skill was really high. They were really strong in their development. And my idea was that by the end of the year or something like that, I want to be on that level, or I want to really improve so I can be somewhere close at least. That's usually what drives you into the state where you burn out, because you might be putting it in a lot of work to get to that level, but you might not see the progress so much, or you might think that you're not improving enough. There's this really big I'm not sure what it's called, but there's a graph that describes the learning process of pretty much anything, which is you come to this initial point where you think you know a lot, and this is a really big high experience for you, because you feel like you're the best person for this type of development, or you're the best person for this skill. But then when you start learning more about the internals, about the details of it, you start learning how much you actually don't know. And a lot of people get stressed out about this. They get burned out because they think they're falling behind, and I was in the same position. So some of the advice that people have given me, and also some of the things that I've experienced personally, are just in general taking your own pace. If you, and this is also something that's kind of, let's say, controversial, because a lot of people online, a lot of these life coaches say that you should work a lot to achieve your goals. I do agree that you should work to achieve your goals. I agree you should put in the time, but it's much more important that you feel healthy, that you feel sane while you're doing it. So if you're working, let's say, 8 hours a day, and someone else is working 11 hours a day, but after those 8 hours, you get some time to rest, you get some time to, let's say, read a bit, play some video games, go outside, see the sun and all that. It's much more important to have that personal time and to have that time to rest than it is to work, let's say, 2 or 3 extra hours a day to be a bit closer to the goal. Because a lot of the time, what can happen is that after a week or 2 or a month or a few months of working extra hours just to reach some level or some goal more quickly, you feel so burned out or so exhausted that the satisfaction of actually reaching that goal is no longer there. Like you don't really feel happy that you did it. And this happened to me. So, for example, 2 years ago, I think I had this really big goal where I wanted to speak at like global conferences. I wanted to be really not famous, but I wanted to be out there. I wanted to be able to help more people and just have a bigger impact. So I started applying to conferences, and in the first 3 months or something of that year, I think it was 2019, I'm not 100% sure, I got rejected by 5 conferences. And I was super depressed at the time because I thought, what, like, no one is going to accept me. I felt really bad because I thought that I was not improving enough. But then a friend told me, like, okay, that's fine. Those are like 5 conferences. Just keep applying to more. Like, if you apply to 100 more conferences, there's going to be at least one that's going to accept you. And I did that. I applied to like a bunch more conferences. And what ended up happening that year is that I had like 12 or 13 really big engagements. And that was before the time of Corona, where everything was, I think, where everything was still open. So I had at least 12 engagements where I was traveling around. So this was really cool because I got to travel around, right? I got to visit like a lot of parts in Europe. I got to visit Russia, the USA, and so on. But what happened in the end, at the end of the year, was after going through all of these conferences, I was like, I don't want to do this again. Like, I literally said that I don't want to have as many conference engagements. I don't want to jump to so many events. I don't want to like spend 3 days traveling just to be one day, just to be somewhere for one day, and then feel completely exhausted the entire week. And that's when you like realize that the goal is there, even though you want to achieve some goal. If you work too hard for it, if you just put in too much time and neglect that personal time and the time to rest, the actual goal that I wanted to have, which I got in the end, was not really what made me happy. I was actually very exhausted. I said, I'm probably not going to do too many conferences next year. And I did some, like, I still did apply to them because I like conferences and events and sharing my experience. But at the same time, I didn't apply to like 50 of them or something. I tried to keep them a bit, shorter. I tried to focus more on my mental health. So that's like the biggest mistake, or a few of the biggest mistakes that I made, which is just in general trying to rush things, which you just can't do. Just imagining, like, if you're trying to cook a meal or bake some cookies or something, you can turn up the heat to bake the cookies quicker, but they're just going to burn up, right? That's kind of the idea. It just has to take its time. That's one. And obviously, like, not taking enough time for personal care, or just like focusing on things that you want. So after hours, it may not be 100% important that you work on your personal projects. It might be more important that you like go outside and ride your bike or talk to your friends or something like that. So those are some of the mistakes, obviously, that I made. There are some others, I guess, too, like taking things a bit too personally. I think that's something that I still sometimes do, but you have to understand that everyone in this industry and everyone in is trying to do their jobs, I guess, in the best way possible. And if someone does give you criticism about something, or if someone does give you more feedback about how you can improve, try to think of it as first of how you can improve, and not firstly as how you did bad or something like that. With feedback, you're going to grow so much. And with feedback, you're going to be a much better person than you would be if you were just like second guessing yourself, or if when people say like a piece of criticism to you, you take it as an insult and you take it personally and like, be mad about it. Try to think about it as ways to improve yourself. Try to think about it like someone, like an expert chef coming in to tell you how to bake your cookies a bit better, so they taste so they taste better and they're more delicious. That's kind of how I would think about it. Just take your time, take in the feedback that people give you. And if someone really is toxic to you, if someone really creates a toxic environment for you where you're not feeling happy, then try to discuss it with them so that you resolve this problem. Otherwise, you might have to look for different solutions, like maybe moving to a different team or moving to a different company as well. So I guess that kind of sums up some of the mistakes that I had in the past, but Definitely there's going to be more. And if you reach out to me, I can share a bit more, I guess. I think I can speak a bit more openly here and not just talk about like Android development, but like, for any job essentially. Obviously in Android, if you're talking about like a specific technology, you need to know the fundamentals. That's pretty much the same with every technology. So if you're talking about Android, you need to know how the Android ecosystem works internally, how the life cycle works, how some of the basic components work, so that you understand how things can be changed, how you can use the functionality that the SDK offers you to build your own product. But what I think are like is the most important thing in general are all the skills that are very, very generic. So this is kind of like controversial again, but like algorithms and things like that, like data structures, these things are usually asked at really big company interviews. And people overlook them. And I was personally very against, like not against them, but I didn't really like them too much. But what I've realized in the past is that whenever like these interviews and these questions are not specifically for you to like remember an algorithm. This is actually about the mindset that you have when you approach a problem. So what's really important is that you go through the problem very, very in very detail. And that you really understand what the problem is, and that you try to think about different ways of how to approach any problem. So don't just jump into the code and try to solve it. Try to think about it. Like that's the most I think important skill that you need to have in any job, which is thinking about how to approach the problem. It's not so much about solving the problem itself as it is knowing what not to do, I guess, and what will work. So for example, if you're, I guess this goes back to like the math class in school. Like whenever you were giving a problem or an equation, whenever you learn something for the first time, it's really hard to solve that, right? You can't just like jump straight into it and try to brute force the solution. But if you try to understand what the problem is, and if someone gives you like a method of solving that problem, every single other problem that's kind of the same becomes so much easier. So in general, like I think I would focus on the fundamental skills of development, which are going through the problem in a good amount of detail, trying to write down what you know, what you don't know, what some of the constraints are, trying to discuss the problem with someone else if they can give you more feedback on, just trying to implement like one solution that kind of works, just like to see the basic logic of it, and if you know how to solve the problem, and then obviously improving the problem over time, or the solution. You don't want to like have the first solution be what you want to use. You want it to actually like be really, really polished, really high quality. So focus on like developing those skills. And finally, what like some of the other skills that people are lacking that are not like development specific are just like general soft skills. Not communicating enough, or communicating in a bad way, I would say, missing out on information because of that. You should have a lot of really good soft skills in any job, because these will help you do your job more easily. Just imagine like if you call someone to do some work around your house, if you want to like redo your bathroom or something, and you just tell them, hey, I need you to redo my bathroom, but you don't tell them how to do it. It might end up like completely a mess and something that you don't want. But if you communicate enough with the right people, and if you have a right amount of communication, then you're going to know what that person can do. Then you're going to know what you truly need to build, or what you want, and it's going to help you solve the problems much more easily. A lot of people just kind of neglect these skills, and they want to focus on their development skills and just coding. Coding is great, and knowing how to code is awesome, but you can be the best programmer in the world. But if you're a bad person, or if you're like not a good communicator, then you're not going to achieve much. I worked with a few people who didn't really have the coding skills, so to say. They weren't very strong in technical aspects, but they had really, really good soft skills and communication skills. And the matter of like technical skills is just like giving them enough experience and learning some new things, and just like applying different problems, and that's it. They became super awesome developers and super awesome people in general. But I've also sadly worked with a few people who had the technical skills, but they were essentially really bad people. They had really, how do I kind of say this? That their mindset was very negative, or they were very like self-centered or very toxic or something like that. And what this meant was that you had like a team that's working together, and then you have this one person that's just like doing their own thing, and is also in the process affecting everyone else through, let's say, negative comments, not enough feedback, or just poor communication skills, which means that the entire team is suffering just because of that person. So again, like obviously, if you're a bad person in general, let's say, if you have like a very bad attitude and you're very negative or something, you can't change that too much, I guess. It might be in your nature or something, but you can like learn how to communicate more clearly, how to be a better person in a team, how to be more, how to be a better, team member essentially, and how to work with other people. I don't think there's a single like job, I guess, in IT or maybe in general that you can work just on your own, like that you will never have to work with someone else. People might say, well, you can always be a freelancer, but that's still not true. Like if you're a freelancer, you have to find clients, you have to work with those clients, and maybe work with some other people who work for that client. So you're never going to be working alone unless you're building your own product. But even if you're building your own product, you're trying to sell it to customers. So you're going to have to work with them too. So yeah, try to focus on soft skills a lot, and try to focus on the fundamentals of development, how things are built, how the logic behind works, and just understanding the problem before you actually try to fix it. I think those are like the best pieces of advice I can give. Something that I mentioned before is try to surround yourself with really, really awesome people. So I had my friends when I started working, and we discussed coding problems all the time. We discussed different applications that we built and so on. And it was really cool to be able to talk to them. So surround yourself with very positive people who will encourage you to learn something new, who will encourage you to be better, who will encourage you to, just like become a better developer or just grow your career. Because those people will essentially push you forward and actually make you believe, or not make you believe, but make you realize that you can become so much more. So for example, in my case, at my first company, I had this mentor, and he's still kind of my mentor, I think, even though we don't work together. And this person essentially always pushed me to be better. They always pushed me to try more, to write better code, to look back on my mistakes and try to fix them in the future, to take criticism better, and so on. But they also pushed me to try new things, which I just didn't think I would be able to do. So for example, before I joined the GD program, we were watching, it was like 6 or something PM, and we were just like, we were doing some overtime. I'm not sure why, but we just like were. And we were watching Google I/O at the time, I think, or something like that. And we were like, oh, this is super awesome. Like seeing all of these Googlers on stage, seeing all of these awesome people be at a conference. This is really, really cool. Like I essentially said that I love how they do things. Like they get on a huge stage and talk to a bunch of people and share their experience and make them like learn new things, I guess, or help them learn new things. And the mentor that I had essentially turned to me and he said, like, have you ever thought about being a GD? And I was like, yeah, that's not going to happen. Like I'm not, I'm not even close to those people on the stage that we were watching. Like I'm not even close. I don't have as much experience. I don't know as much. I'm just not capable of doing something like that. He literally looked at me and said, well, you do local events. You are applying to more events to come. You are working on a lot of content. You're mentoring a bunch of people. I don't really see the difference. And this really like woke something up in me and gave me a new perspective on, okay, like these people on the stage that I'm looking at, like the event, they might not be so much different from me. I might be able to do something like that in the future too. And it's kind of like the movie Inception, when someone puts an idea in your head, then you just like think about it and you think about it and you think about it, and eventually it becomes like real, right? So for me, I just like said, okay, I just try applying to more conferences and see how it goes. And it went awesome. Like I did a lot of them. I said, well, I'll try to write more content and maybe like get a book engagement so I can publish a book someday. And I published a book, after a while. So all of these like people that do this for you, that give you actually a better perspective on your skills and on how much you're valuable, or how much you're worth, or how much you can actually achieve. These are really important people. You have to surround yourself with them. You have to find those people in your life. It can be your family, it can be your friends, it can be your coworkers, it can be a random person on the internet like me, I guess. But just make sure that you surround yourself with those type of people. And again, try to avoid the negative, the toxic type of people too, because at the time at the company, I also had I guess a very negative person, a very toxic person who, contrary to the mentor, constantly said that I couldn't do some things, or that I'm not ready for some things. But I kind of took it as a challenge again, and I still try doing those things. So just make sure that you like cut out those negative, toxic people in your life, and make sure that you surround yourself with very positive, very encouraging people, because they'll be able to show you how much you can actually do, even if you're not aware of like your knowledge, your skill, your expertise. The first, obviously, is just understanding your self-worth, knowing that you might feel that you're a junior developer, but you're not. You're more advanced than that, or you might think that you'll never reach some level, but it's just a matter of time. So just have a good perspective and keep working on it, and you'll get there. The second is obviously to like take some time off. Definitely take care of yourself. Take some time off. Make sure that you're not working too much, that you're not feeling stressed out, that you're not unhappy in your position. Because if you reach a point where you're not happy in your position, then generally there's no turning back. Like if you become unhappy at a company, at a job, there's like no way that you'll ever go back to being fully happy. I don't think so. Like you're always going to look at through that perspective of being unhappy once, and you're going to start noticing issues more often. Which is another thing that I have to share, is talk about your like problems or issues. Not just in terms of like if you have personal issues and you might want to look for friends or family to talk to about your problems, something that's making you feel bad or depressed. But also like, yeah, obviously, like if you want to look for professional help, I would definitely suggest that, because it's become like this stigmatized thing that like looking for help for mental health is a bad thing. It's not. It's like completely normal, completely fine. And in fact, more people should do it. But also in terms of careers, make sure you talk about issues with your team lead, with your managers, because if you have issues at a company or at a job, you can't resolve them unless you talk about them. So there's nothing in this world that's going to fix itself unless you do something about it, right? You can't fix, if you, I'm not sure like what examples to give, but for example, like if you don't like the way that like the society works, I guess, or the way that your group of friends behaves in like a certain situation, the only way to change that is to actually start doing something yourself and to talk about it. And every problem in this world basically comes from the lack of communication, the lack of understanding. And that's essentially what happens. Like people don't talk about it enough, and this problem becomes bigger and bigger. It's especially true for like careers. Like if you're unhappy in your position and you don't talk about it, you're going to become more and more unhappy until you reach the point where it's just too much and you're burnt out and you like quit your job, or you get fired because you're not productive enough, because you don't like the job anymore and you have to go somewhere else. I'm pretty sure that most of these situations can be resolved if people just like spoke up a bit more. So don't be afraid to speak up. Don't be afraid to talk about the issues that you might be seeing, or whenever you have some like a situation where you're not entirely happy, because the only way to resolve that is through actually talking about it. So yeah, again, to kind of sum it up, which is take your own pace. Make sure to have a good perspective, because you can accomplish so much more with a better perspective and people around you. Make sure to take some time off and to like just, not work too much, and make sure to talk about things, not just positive things that make you happy, but also negative things that don't make you happy, because you can resolve those issues if you just talk enough. Those would be my top 4 tips, I guess, that I personally applied through my career. And in the last year or so, I've seen huge improvements in my, personal mental health and just in general in my career, because I've been talking about the issues and all this. Essentially, for the most part, I've been preparing these conferences and community engagements and content in my spare time. So I have been doing extra work, so to say. But at the same time, I've never really thought about it as work too much for the most part. So if I'm writing content or something, it's because I want to learn something. It's because I want to improve in some regard. And if I don't feel like it's too much for me, if I don't feel that I'm overwhelmed, then that's fine. Writing articles on a weekend might not be the best thing, because you can always write or do some other things on the weekend, like spend your time with family, with friends and so on. But it also might be just the right thing that you have to do. For me, I've had periods where I just took the weekends off to work on a book. And it really came as an awesome experience for me, because at the time I might not have been feeling too great in general, but because I had some work to occupy me on the weekends, I felt much better. And also I wanted to achieve that goal, and it just came naturally. So I think it is okay if you do some extra work, as long as you're not doing that work, just because you feel like you have to. If you want to do something, that's fine. But again, be mindful of your mental health. And obviously, I think something that's very neglected is people underestimate how supportive their companies are or can be. So for example, in my first company, I received a ton of support for writing content, conferences, and so on, because they recognize the value of that, not just for me, but for the company too. If I write an article that has 50,000 views, that's 50,000 people that saw some content that I wrote and saw the company that I worked for. So it's good PR for the company too. The previous company that I worked for was explicitly working on content, and generally educational material, and it was a natural part of my job to work on books, to work on video courses, to work on tutorials, and we had dedicated time for that. And currently here at Stream, I also have time to commit to conferences, to engagements, things like that, like this. And everyone understands this, and everyone understands that it's not just good for the company, for me, but it's also good for the company. So try to talk to your company if you're working somewhere to see if they are supportive of this, if they are willing to dedicate some time for you for content or for events. And if so, try to discuss with them and plan a good amount of time that you need, so that both parties, both the company and you, are happy about it. In worst case, what's going to happen is that they might not recognize the value of this, of articles and everything like that. And what you can do is you can again, do it in your spare time if you have it, do it slowly, but then just not tie yourself to the company when you write this content, because that's also an option. They don't owe your content. So if you're not seeing eye to eye with your company, you can always publish it on behalf of yourself. Because in the end, it builds your own CV, it builds your own portfolio, and it might give you a better opportunity to get a nicer job that also does support you in writing content. So there's that. But another thing that I also want to mention is, I think it's not the time constraint that a lot of people have, that they don't get around to writing content or working on projects. I think it's actually more just the mental block of starting. When you want to start writing content, you're not sure how to do it, right? You don't have much. If you don't have much experience, then it's hard to start. And it's the same with everything. Whenever you want to learn a new skill. So my advice for this is to just start. Like if you want to write an article about X, Y, or Z, don't think about how many articles exist about this topic already. Don't think about the quality of the article. Don't think about all the things that you want to cover in this article. Just start writing it. It's going to help you so much if you just start writing something, because then you get this flow of ideas and you slowly improve and improve and improve, and you get more content out, and you realize that it's much easier than you think. Same for conference engagements. Like if you are not sure how to start, what to start, if it feels like it's too much for you, you don't have the time, try doing like a small speaking engagement or sharing your knowledge or something in the company first. Just like a small 15, 20, 30-minute talk where you will talk about the latest thing that you built for your project. That can be like a small start, but it's a start in the end. That can lead to another talk like that, and eventually someone might say, or you might think, maybe I should do this for the local community and not just my company. And then you start doing local talks, which is what I did. And then after you do these local talks, you're like, okay, maybe I can also do this in like an international engagement. And you start applying there. So the biggest, I think, issue, the biggest roadblock with all of these side things, side projects, learning new skills is literally just starting. So whatever you do, whenever you run into this problem, just start doing something and it'll work itself out. Trust me. There's just like one tip that I generally say, and I kind of discussed this a bit in our previous event at Recro, which is you don't have to stay up to date with everything. There is so much content that's coming out. There are so many features, so many technologies that are coming out on a daily basis. It's impossible for you to track everything. It's impossible for you to know everything and be an expert in everything. That's something that I've seen people do, that try to be an expert in everything, but then you're not, like you don't know anything too well. I just focus on a few things that are interesting to me. And I think you should kind of try and do the same. So let's say like a few years ago, I started learning Kotlin, and essentially like very early in my career, I started learning Kotlin way before it was like 1.0 or stable or anything like that. And I started learning it because I thought it was like a nice language. It's going to like be a change in the community in Android development and so on. No one else I knew was learning Kotlin. And this is fine. They didn't have to, because what I did was, as I was learning things, I was sharing my experience and teaching them how to use Kotlin. And they didn't have to, let's say, keep up to date as I was, but they were learning some other things and teaching me those things that I didn't know. Then like a few years later, I started learning about Kotlin coroutines, even though like a ton of things were happening in the Android world and Kotlin world, but I stuck to Kotlin coroutines because they felt really interesting to me. And I spent like a good year or so just focusing on Kotlin coroutines and just talking about that, just learning that. I didn't really want to learn about, or I didn't really have to learn about all the new things in Android because I didn't use them all. And even if I did have to learn them, it's much easier to ask someone else who can dedicate more time. And the latest thing that I've been kind of learning and exploring, which is interesting to me, is Jetpack Compose. Again, I could have chosen like 5 other things in Android or Kotlin that I could have learned, such as like Kotlin multi-platform or Kotlin backend development or whatever else. But I decided to go for Jetpack Compose, because that was like the most interesting topic for me, and it also aligned with my work. And because of that, I think I can say that I have almost 1 year of experience with Jetpack Compose, even though it came out like 2 weeks ago or something like that as stable. And this is a really good thing, because like if you find something that's interesting to you, just keep to that. And whatever else you need to learn, you're going to learn it, and you're going to learn it with the help of other people. So don't be afraid to not care too much about what's new in Android or what's new in Android development or what's new in a specific technology that you're learning. As long as you can keep doing your job well, and as long as you find something that's interesting to you that you're going to learn about. For me, it was Kotlin, then coroutines, then Compose. It might be something else in the future. But because I had like very clear focus on a few of those things, I, for one, managed to introduce Kotlin to a few companies that I worked at. I managed to do a lot of public speaking about Kotlin and Android. Then I managed to do a lot of public speaking about coroutines in Android and in Kotlin in general. And I wrote a book about it, or co-authored a book. And now that I'm working in Compose, I also managed to work on a book about Compose, create a ton of content about Compose. And I managed to get a job as a Compose developer 2 months before Compose was stable and released. And we've been doing a really awesome work here at Stream with Compose. And that's not something that like I think many people can say, you know, they get an opportunity to work in Compose because it's a new technology. But because I decided to focus on that, I opened opportunities for me. I didn't wait for someone else to give them to me, or I didn't wait for me to magically get into some new topic. I found something that's interesting to me and I just stuck with it. So that would be my advice. Don't learn everything. Just try to learn the things that are interesting to you and try to build or focus your career around that. That's going to make you happy because you're learning something that you want and you're working with something that you want to learn. Instead of like learning everything and just like using 5% of the things that you learn. If you take a look at all the you know, UI related or like application related technologies such as the web, the mobile, video games, and so on. All of these or desktop, I guess. All of these technologies are kind of moving toward the same trend of declarative UI frameworks, which is Swift UI, you know, Flutter, React Native, Jetpack Compose now, and I guess some other things too. So this is like a shift for everyone, and I don't think you like necessarily have to learn everything about it, but if you have a technology that's browsing this new way of building things, or that is solely working in that way of things, then I think for the next few years at least, we'll be, you know, listening to a lot more about declarative frameworks for UI. I think that's really, really something that's important right now, and something that's just in general very, very popular. So I'll focus on something like that. Another thing that's really, you know, that's really exploding and that's really being prominent right now is code sharing in general, or like multi-platform experiences, or cross-platform, however you want to call it. So frameworks and languages and solutions that let you build not one app, but, you know, multiple apps based on which technology you were using, I guess, and also which platform you want to target. So for example, you know, Flutter is a really, really popular thing because you can learn Flutter and you can develop not just like mobile applications, but desktop applications too, web applications, and a bunch of other things that you can build in Flutter essentially. And it's really cool because, you know, you can learn one technology and build various applications. And this can mean that you have a lot of opportunity for work too. The similar thing is kind of happening with Kotlin multi-platform, and also what happened with React Native. People want to not have to learn multiple technologies, so you can just build one thing. In the web side, or like the backend side of things, that's usually like if you learn JavaScript or something like that, then you have so much opportunity for work, because you can build backend, you can also build front end, you can build a bunch of different things. So the third things that I would kind of focus on, let's say technology-wise, are declarative toolkits, if they exist in your technology, I guess, and just like keeping an eye out on that, because I think that's going to be more and more prominent in the future. And sharing code between platforms, or like having cross-platform development or something like that, because it's going to reduce the cost of development, and that means that you're going to be able to develop things more easily, more, you know, faster in general, and it's going to be cheaper. And if you do it well, it's going to be higher quality too than having two different code bases for the same thing, I guess. So those two things. But obviously there's a lot of different things that are being in the focus right now, such as security, such as, you know, performance of applications, privacy, accessibility, which is really important, but is not as talked about, I think. All of these things help us make not just good applications and good code, but like good products and good experiences too. If you have an application, if you build an application that is not accessible to people, that's effectively like millions of people that can't use their application. So try to keep accessibility in mind when you build applications. Try to keep security and privacy in mind too, because there's a lot of talk about data breaches, about information leaking, and people don't want their information to be like publicly available or something like that, or to be leaked. And these are just fundamental things that have to be more and more and more present in our applications. Just writing good quality applications, products, and experiences. So those, I guess, 3 things or like 5 things, depending on how you look at it, which is declarative UIs, I guess, having good and like reusable code in multi-platform support, and then focusing on security, privacy, and accessibility. Okay, thank you for watching Dev Chats by Recro. It was really, really nice of you to be here. And if you want to follow me more, you can definitely follow me on LinkedIn and on Twitter, and we shall share the links in the description.